I never imagined betrayal could arrive in the form of a simple itinerary. I was 40 years old, a wife of nearly 15 years, and I thought I knew every corner of my husband's life. We had built a marriage that looked steady from the outside, filled with dinner parties, family trips, and whispered promises of forever. But one evening, while Michael was in the shower and his laptop sat open on the kitchen island, I saw it. An email subject line glowing like a dagger. Your flight to Paris is confirmed. At first I smiled. Paris was ours. It was where we'd honeymooned, where he promised me we'd return every decade to celebrate our love. Maybe I thought this was his surprise. Maybe he had finally remembered that promise. My heart even leapt at the idea, imagining myself walking beside him down the Champs-Élysées again. But then my eyes traveled further down the email, and the air left my lungs. Passenger 1, Michael Carter. Passenger 2, Emily Rhodes. Emily. A name I recognized instantly. She wasn't a stranger. She wasn't just a colleague. She was the woman I had always suspected lingered too close, laughed too freely at his jokes, texted too often late at night. And here it was in black and white confirmation. He was flying to Paris with her to our city on the very week of our anniversary. I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled so violently that I gripped the edge of the counter just to steady myself. The shower upstairs still ran water pounding against tile, while my marriage shattered silently below. I wanted to scream, to storm upstairs and demand answers, but instead I just stared at the screen. My husband was taking another woman to Paris. And not just anywhere in Paris, but to the same hotel we had once stayed in. I knew because the booking confirmation was attached. Every detail was there, dates, times, seats side by side in business class. I sat down at the table staring at my reflection in the glossy screen. My face looked foreign, pale, hollow, stunned. The woman who once believed in forever had just been introduced to her replacement. The tears came hot and fast, but beneath them something else began to stir. Rage. Cold, unyielding rage. Not the kind that explodes outward, but the kind that simmers sharp and calculated. Rage that whispered, "No. He doesn't get to humiliate me like this. Not in Paris. Not on our anniversary." I wiped my cheeks, closed the laptop, and sat in silence until Michael emerged. Towel slung around his waist, smiling casually as though he hadn't just gutted me. "You okay?" he asked, kissing my forehead before rummaging for his phone. "I'm fine," I lied. My voice didn't shake. My mask was already forming. That night, while he slept beside me, I plotted. I opened the booking site, typed in the same flight number, and searched. And there it was, seat 14C, right beside them, still available. My pulse raced as I entered my credit card information, my hands steadier than they had been all day. The confirmation email slid into my inbox, with a quiet chime sealing my place in this twisted theater. For the next week, I played my part perfectly. I packed his favorite shirts for his conference, kissed him goodbye each morning, smiled when he said he'd be home late preparing presentations. And each time my heart hardened further. On the day of the flight, I arrived at the airport separately, dressed in simple black, my hair tied back, my face calm. I wanted to blend in, to disappear into the crowd until the moment came. When I reached the gate, I spotted them instantly. Michael, tall and confident, his arm resting too easily on Emily's chair. She leaned toward him, laughing at something he whispered, her hand brushing his. My stomach twisted, but I didn't look away. Instead, I clutched my boarding pass like a weapon. I had seen enough affairs unravel in whispers and slammed doors. But mine was going to unravel 35,000 feet above the ground, with nowhere for him to run. When they boarded, I waited a full 5 minutes before following. My heels clicked softly against the jet bridge, every step echoing the decision I had made. The flight attendant smiled warmly as she pointed me toward row 14. And there they were, already settled and champagne glasses in hand. Michael's laughter carried down the aisle, warm and familiar, but hollow now. I walked slowly, savoring the moment, until I reached my seat 14C. His head snapped up, his smile froze. Emily's glass wobbled in her hand. "Hello, darling," I said, my voice calm, steady, almost sweet. What a coincidence. Michael's face drained of color so quickly it was almost comical. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like he was trying to find the right excuse, but every word died on his tongue. Emily shifted uncomfortably, clutching her glass of champagne, as if it could shield her from the humiliation pressing in on her from every direction. The flight attendant glanced between us, sensing tension, but smiling politely. "Can I help you with your seat, ma'am?" "No," I replied smoothly, sliding my carry-on into the overhead bin with deliberate calm. "This is my seat." The attendant nodded and moved on. I sat down, my body brushing against Michael's arm, close enough for him to feel the tremor of restrained rage vibrating inside me. He stammered finally, "Victoria, what are you? What are you doing here?" I turned my head slowly, letting him see the ice in my eyes. Oh, I wouldn't miss Paris for the world. After all, it's our city, isn't it? Where we toasted our future, where you promised me forever. My voice lowered sharp enough to cut. "I see you just forgot to mention the change in guest list." Emily's cheeks burned crimson, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass until it threatened to snap. This isn't what it looks like," she whispered, her voice quivering. I let out a small, humorless laugh. "Then please enlighten me. Because from where I'm sitting in my rightful seat beside my husband, it looks exactly like betrayal boarding for Paris." Michael leaned closer, his voice hushed, desperate. "Please, Victoria, don't do this here. Let's just talk when we land." I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "When we land. So you can whisk her off to the same hotel where we spent our honeymoon, toast her with the champagne we once shared." "No, Michael. We'll talk here. 35,000 feet above the ground where the truth can't be ignored." The engines roared to life as the plane taxied. The hum of takeoff vibrated beneath us, a perfect backdrop for the storm brewing in our row. I didn't shout, I didn't cause a scene. I wanted every word to be quiet, precise, inescapable. The kind of fury that doesn't need volume to devastate. As the plane ascended, I leaned back in my seat, my eyes fixed on the clouds rising outside the window. My heart should have been racing, but instead it beat with a steady rhythm. I was in control now. For the first time since discovering the tickets, I wasn't the victim gasping for air. I was the executioner choosing the time and place. I turned to Emily, who had gone pale, her lips pressed tightly together. "Tell me, Emily, did he promise you Paris was your city now? Did he tell you the story about how the lights along the Seine look like stars scattered by God's own hand? Because he told me that once, right after he kissed me on Pont Neuf." She flinched, her eyes darting to Michael, seeking rescue. But he had none to give. He sat frozen, caught between guilt and fear, his carefully crafted double life unraveling in real time. The flight attendants came by with the meal service, oblivious to the silent war raging in row 14. "Beef or chicken?" one asked cheerfully. I smiled up at her, my tone warm, almost playful. "Beef, please, and extra wine." Michael declined his meal, his appetite clearly gone. Emily barely touched hers, her fork trembling each time she lifted it. I savored every bite, not because I was hungry, but because the act of eating calmly in their presence was its own kind of victory. Hours passed in a tense quiet, broken only by my occasional deliberate remarks. I reminded Michael of anniversaries we had celebrated in Paris, whispered memories of nights under the Eiffel Tower, recalled promises spoken in hotel rooms that now felt like graves. Each word was a dagger, and I wielded them with precision. At one point, Michael whispered, "Please, Victoria, people are watching." I leaned closer, my breath brushing his ear. "Good. Let them watch. Let them see exactly what kind of man you are." As the plane crossed the Atlantic, fatigue settled in, but sleep eluded me. My mind replayed every lie, every late-night text, every excuse he had fed me. The woman who boarded that flight, broken and betrayed, was dissolving. In her place, someone sharper, colder, and infinitely stronger was emerging. And somewhere over the ocean, as the cabin lights dimmed and the world outside dissolved into darkness, I made my decision. I wasn't going to wait until Paris to end this charade. The confrontation had already begun, but the real reckoning, the moment neither of them would ever forget, was still to come. When the cabin lights dimmed, a strange quiet settled over the rows of sleeping passengers. Soft snores, the rustle of blankets, the occasional clink of a glass from the galley. It all seemed so distant, so unreal. Beside me, Michael shifted uncomfortably, his body tense, his hands fidgeting as though the seatbelt was strangling him. Emily pretended to sleep, Her eyes squeezed shut, but the rigid rise and fall of her chest betrayed her fear. I sat between them, staring at the glow of the seatbelt sign, and I thought about how betrayal doesn't happen in one sudden blow. It happens in whispers, in glances, in little choices made again and again until the life you thought you had has been replaced entirely. And here it was, my reality trapped in this narrow row at 35,000 feet. Victoria. Michael finally whispered, his voice low, urgent. Please, let's not do this here. We'll talk in Paris, I promise you. Just not here. I turned slowly, my voice calm. Too calm. Why not here, Michael? Isn't this the perfect stage? You bought her a ticket, sat her beside you, toasted her with champagne. Why not let the truth soar as high as the plane you boarded together? He winced, his eyes darting nervously to the row behind us, where a young couple leaned toward each other in sleep, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just inches away. I leaned back, crossing my arms, letting the silence torture him. Every minute stretched like an eternity. And then, with deliberate slowness, I pulled my phone from my bag. I had saved everything: the booking confirmation, the hotel receipt, even the texts I'd found weeks ago when his carelessness betrayed him. My thumb slid across the screen, the glow illuminating my face in the dim cabin. What are you doing? He asked, panic tightening his voice. Sending an update, I replied softly, to David. Emily's eyes shot open. Her head whipped toward me. David, she echoed, her voice cracking. Oh, did he not tell you? I asked sweetly. I reached out to your boyfriend. Or should I say fiancé? He seemed very interested to learn about this little trip. Her face drained of blood, her hands clutching the armrest like a lifeline. You wouldn't. I already did. I smiled, sharp and cold. Right after I booked my seat. He knows exactly which flight you're on. He knows where you'll be staying. He even asked me to give you a message. I leaned closer, my lips near her ear. He said, enjoy Paris, because it will be the last trip you take together. Emily's breath caught in her throat, her body trembling as she pulled away from me. Michael looked at her in shock, as though the betrayal he had orchestrated was suddenly too ugly for him to stomach when mirrored back at him. I put the phone down, my tone measured. So you see, Emily? I'm not the only one who knows. Actions have consequences, and sometimes karma prefers an audience. For the remainder of the flight, they sat in silence, both of them trapped in the prison of their own choices. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to cause a scene. The power had shifted, and they felt it in every breath, every minute of that endless journey. When the announcement came, ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into Paris. I felt a strange calm wash over me. Outside the window, the lights of the city began to sparkle against the dark horizon, just as they had on my honeymoon years ago. Only now they weren't a promise of love. They were a backdrop for endings. As the wheels touched down and the cabin erupted with the usual flurry of seatbelts unbuckling and bags being pulled from overhead bins, I stayed still. I let Michael and Emily scramble, their nerves raw, their dignity already shredded. When they finally turned to me, Michael whispered, Please, Victoria, let's talk. I smiled, serene. Of course, but not here, not now. We'll talk when David arrives. And with that, I stood, smoothed my coat, and stepped into the aisle, my heels clicking softly against the floor. Each step carried me closer to the confrontation I had been building toward, the one that would leave them with nowhere to run. The terminal in Paris was alive with the usual chaos: families reuniting, couples hand in hand, weary travelers rushing toward taxis. Yet for me, the air was electric, heavy with anticipation. I walked slowly, deliberately, my carry-on rolling behind me as Michael and Emily followed a few paces back. They didn't speak, not to each other, not to me. They kept their distance like guilty children caught sneaking out past curfew. I scanned the crowd, my heart pounding, and then I saw him, David, Emily's fiancé. He stood tall near the arrivals exit, his coat draped over his arm, his jaw set hard as stone. His eyes locked onto us instantly, and the flicker of pain I saw there nearly unraveled me. But then it hardened into something else: resolve. Emily faltered, her steps slowing when she saw him. David, she whispered, her voice trembling. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The look on his face said everything. Months of suspicion, weeks of silence, all now vindicated in the cruelest way possible. I walked straight to him, my chin high, my expression steady. "Thank you for coming," I said softly. His eyes softened only for me, a flicker of shared grief before turning back to Emily with a coldness that chilled me to the bone. Michael hovered awkwardly at the edge, his confidence shattered, his usual charm slipping through his fingers like sand. "David, please, it's not," Emily began, her voice breaking. "Not what it looks like," he cut her off, his voice quiet but sharp. "I know exactly what it is. I've known for months. But seeing you step off that plane with him..." He shook his head, his voice heavy with finality. "That's the end, Emily." Michael tried to intervene, his hand half reaching toward David. "Look, this isn't the place." David's glare froze him in place. "Don't. You've taken enough from me. You don't get to take this moment too." The crowd bustled around us, but for a moment it felt like the entire terminal had gone silent, as if the universe itself was pausing to watch the unraveling of two carefully constructed lies. I pulled the folded envelope from my bag, the printouts of the flight confirmations, the hotel reservations, the screenshots of texts neither of them knew I had. I handed it to David without a word. Proof in case they ever tried to twist the story. Michael's face turned ashen. "Victoria, please, we can fix this." I turned to him, my voice calm, almost gentle. "Fix this. You destroyed our marriage the moment you put her name on that ticket. You didn't just betray me, you erased me. Paris was ours, Michael, and you made it hers, that I will never forgive." Emily sobbed quietly, her hands covering her face. David didn't move toward her. He didn't comfort her. He simply stood taller, stronger, as though betrayal had burned away whatever weakness once kept him tethered to her lies. "Come on," he said to me finally, his voice steady, commanding. "Let's go." And in that moment, I realized he wasn't just speaking about leaving the terminal. He was speaking about leaving it all behind, the lies, the humiliation, the people who had broken us. I nodded, falling into step beside him. My carry-on rolled smoothly across the floor, lighter than it had ever felt. Behind us, Michael called my name, desperation dripping from every syllable. But I didn't look back. Not once. Outside, the crisp Parisian air hit my lungs like a baptism. The Eiffel Tower glittered faintly in the distance, no longer a monument of my lost love, but a symbol of my survival. As David and I walked toward the taxi stand, our silence spoke volumes. Two lives shattered, yes, but also two souls no longer bound to deceit. And somewhere deep inside me, beneath the grief and rage, a seed of something unexpected began to take root. It wasn't love, not yet. It was dignity, it was strength. It was the undeniable truth that betrayal hadn't destroyed me, it had set me free. The taxi wound its way through Paris, past boulevards lined with golden lights, past cafes alive with laughter, past streets where I had once walked hand in hand with Michael, believing in forever. I pressed my forehead against the glass, watching the city blur by. The memories tried to claw their way in our honeymoon strolls, the kisses under street lamps, the promises whispered on balconies, but they felt like they belonged to another lifetime, to another woman, not me. David sat beside me, silent. His hands rested on his knees, clenched tightly, but his face was unreadable. I wondered if he was reliving his own Paris memories with Emily, if he too felt the sting of knowing those cobblestones now carried ghosts of lies. When the taxi stopped at the hotel Michael had booked for his secret getaway, I almost laughed. The driver asked if we wanted to get out. David shook his head firmly. "Non, another place." His French was clipped, practiced. And with that, we left Michael and Emily's fantasy behind. We checked into a modest hotel near Montmartre. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. No shared history, no poisoned memories. Just a room with clean sheets and windows that opened to the hum of the city. As I set my bag down, the exhaustion finally hit me. The weight of holding myself together through hours of flight and confrontation collapsed onto my shoulders. "I don't know how you did it," David said quietly, his eyes meeting mine. "The way you sat there on that plane. Calm, controlled." I would have exploded. I gave a tired smile. Exploding would have given them what they wanted, the drama, the spectacle. But silence. Silence is heavier. It makes them sit with what they've done. We stood there in silence, two strangers bound together by devastation, until I finally whispered, "Do you ever wonder if we missed the signs because we wanted so badly to believe in love David exhaled slowly, his gaze dropping to the floor. All the time. The next days blurred into something I hadn't expected. Paris became a city of reclamation. I walked streets I once walked with Michael, but this time, with no hand clutching mine, no illusion to protect. I drank coffee in cafes alone, watched the sun sink behind Notre Dame, strolled along the Seine. And strangely, instead of breaking me, it healed me. Every step proved that I was still here, still breathing, still capable of beauty even after betrayal. David and I often crossed paths, sometimes walking together, sometimes apart. We didn't cling. We didn't pretend we were more than what we were, two people grieving. But there was comfort in the companionship and knowing someone else understood the sharp sting of trust turned to ash. On our last night, we stood on the steps of Sacré-Cœur, the city sprawling beneath us, glittering like a sea of stars. David turned to me, his voice steady. "When I go home, I'm ending it. No delays, no second chances. She doesn't deserve them." I nodded. Neither does he. We stood in silence for a long moment, letting the night air carry away the last remnants of who we had been before this trip. Finally, I whispered, "Maybe that's what Paris will always mean now. Not love, not romance, but truth. The place where illusions finally died." He looked at me with something softer in his eyes. Not love, not yet, but respect, understanding, the beginnings of something honest. When I boarded my flight home alone this time, I felt lighter. My marriage was over. My heart was bruised, battered, scarred. But I wasn't destroyed. I had faced betrayal at 35,000 feet in the city of love itself and walked away stronger. And maybe that's the lesson I needed. That sometimes life rips away the fairy tales so you can see yourself clearly for the first time. That endings, no matter how brutal, are also beginnings. So if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever felt like your world ended in a single moment, remember this. Your story doesn't end there. Sometimes it begins with the seat you choose to take back your power. If my story spoke to you, if you've ever faced heartbreak and found a way to rise, I hope you'll stay with me here. Like this video, share it with someone who needs strength, and subscribe for more stories of resilience and truth. Most of all, leave a comment, tell me your story, because none of us should carry pain like this alone.